quite convenient too, because in 2021, the first Shrek will turn 20 years old, which is ridiculous to say the least. Oh man, how time flies. And they time it just right. You get all the people my age who, grew out of animation. They'll see that Shrek 5 is coming and they'll be like, oh my god, my childhood has come back! And then they'll race to the theater to see it just because. Similar to how they turned out for Toy Story 3 and Monsters University and Finding Dory. So I think, if they release Shrek 5 in 2020 or 2021, it's going to get that kind of turnout, no matter how good or bad the movie is. Honestly, I could take it or leave it. I am not the biggest fan of Shrek. I like the first one. I have issues with the first one, glaring issues, but when it does right, it does really right. 2 is just funny in parts, but painfully juvenile in others. I mean, I'm not 12 anymore. Stuff like Pinocchio's wearing a thong isn't adult to me. Maybe back when I was 12 it was, but no, not anymore. And Shrek the Third, forgettable. I haven't seen it in ages though, but it's forgettable. And then there's Shrek Forever After, which I didn't mind. It was just a solid, straightforward adventure with Shrek and company. Although it didn't have much going for it. It was just a very vanilla movie, so hopefully 5 is, more like the first one, but without the bitterness, because, you gotta think of the times when Shrek was made. Katzenberg was still very bitter about his tenure at Disney, and at the time he was still mudslinging with Michael Eisner, so there's a lot of bitterness in Shrek. Now, that's one thing Shrek 2 has over Shrek 1. That bitterness is not there. Shrek 2 just aims to be a full-on comedy and not, a low-key angry send-up of Disney. And I don't mind, parody of Disney. It can be done well. I just think that in some instances, the first Shrek does not do it well, and you can sense Katzenberg's pettiness at the time. Not to mention Lord Farquaad being a caricature of Michael Eisner. That pretty much seals the deal right there. Now, those are the few things that kind of ruin the first Shrek for me, but the good stuff in Shrek 1 is so good that I almost don't care, so it's a solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. And it certainly was very funny and witty and had great characters. The story was what worked in that one for me. But 2 and onwards, it's just Sville. So hopefully Shrek 5 is more like the first one, but without the bitterness, and hopefully it's really funny without, seeming forced or anything. I mean, Shrek's trademark is humor aimed at 12-year-olds, innuendos and, sort of inappropriate jokes, stuff that makes cartoon-hating preteens and teenagers go, cool! I mean, that's always been Shrek's shtick. Hopefully it's done well in this one. So, Shrek 5, again, take it or leave it. Shadows is the one I'm really looking forward to. Mostly because Edgar Wright is directing, and because it's working off of the premise that Me and My Shadow was going to use. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a 2D CG film like Me and My Shadow was aiming to be. Me and My Shadow sounded very quirky and very surreal, and it just pains me that that movie will never get made, but this happens a lot in animation land. They always announce these exciting projects, it seems like they're going to happen, then they cancel them. So, get used to that, folks. If you're relatively new to animation news of the fandom, be prepared for a lot of disappointments. There's a lot of awesome, in a worse world, Inside Out would have been canceled. But no, that didn't happen. Anyways, long story short, I'm very interested to see what Edgar Wright does with Shadows, and this will be his first animated movie. Imagine him bringing the verve and the style of his Cornetto trilogy to animation. That is just exciting. That is, if the project is still a go. Last I heard, it's still a go, so the earliest I expect it to come out is either 2020 or 2021. If it's going to be a mainline Glendale production, then 2021, because I'm gonna assume that Shrek 5 takes 2020, because they're writing it right now, and it's a little closer to production, and I can just see Shrek 5 happening first, because of reasons. But, stranger things have happened in the world of animation. Pixar, delayed their own highly anticipated sequel to accommodate a quirky, risky original, so it's not out of the question. Then we get to a vast library of projects that were either announced or that were just announced, but nothing has happened. A long time ago, DreamWorks had announced projects like Rumble, Maintenance, Grim Legacy. A lot of them were fantasy stories that sort of aligned with the direction they wanted to take at the time. Around 2010-ish, Guillermo del Toro had joined DreamWorks as like a sort of executive producer or consultant on projects. And you can definitely see that in films like Puss in Boots and Rise of the Guardians, especially Rise of the Guardians. Like Rise of the Guardians hints at a darker DreamWorks that never happened. And that DreamWorks was going to make movies like The Grim Legacy and Alma and darker tinged stories like that Gil's All Fright Diner. I think somebody once told me on here that the book Gil's All Fright Diner is not a really family-friendly book, so who knows? But again, things have changed because of all the trouble DreamWorks went through, and again, I don't know what kind of pictures Universal is going to want them to do, or if Universal is going to let them do what they want. Hopefully it's not just silly comedies. I mean, you know, a sort of Trolls or Boss Baby-esque picture isn't bad when it's once in a blue moon, but that shouldn't be the only thing DreamWorks, that shouldn't be the only thing DreamWorks should be doing. And if you look back at the past, DreamWorks made movies like Prince of Egypt, so they've really gone through a lot of phases. I think they can find a happy medium between, riskier films and experiments and, safe comedies. Anyways, one of the projects that they announced in the last couple of years was Beagle, the story of the unimaginary friend. I think that's what the name of the book is, and it deals with an imaginary friend looking for an owner, and it sounds very cute and heartfelt. It'd be cool if they picked that one up. Apparently the director of Up in the Air is supposed to do that one, but we haven't heard anything about it since, and I think they announced this back in 2015. But I have a feeling it'll be one of the projects to move ahead under Universal. Flawed Dogs, which was supposed to be directed by Noah Baumbach, that was supposed to be a go, but I'm not sure where that is now. There were a couple sequels that were on DreamWorks' slate before the whole downsizing happened. Madagascar 4 and Puss in Boots 2. I'm all for a Madagascar 4. Madagascar 3, I think, took everything that worked about the first two films and amplified it. And I think that 3 is a far more consistent movie than 1 and 2. 1 and 2 have great ideas and have fun stretches in them, but are mostly middling because of the execution and just the pacing and everything. And also tonal issues, and the movie's not knowing what they wanted to be. Whereas Madagascar 3 felt like it was fully in control. It felt like it was the movie it was aiming to, the first and the second one were aiming to be. So if 4 continues that madcap energy and fun and heart, then I'm in. And it was supposed to be directed by DreamWorks president Muriel Soria, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that Madagascar 4 will happen eventually because of the success of the first 3 films. I think they're going to just look at the gross of penguins and they're just going to chalk it up to, you need the whole Madagascar gang. If the Madagascar gang aren't in the movie, then it ain't going to sell. So hopefully they make a Madagascar 4. Because, I like these characters. It'd be cool to see them in, the circus gang in the third one. And there's more locations to go to. I mean, they didn't go to South America. They didn't go to any part of Asia at all. I mean, that'd be kind of cool if they could do a Madagascar 4 where they go to the Amazon, or they could do like a Madagascar 4 where they go to the jungles of India, or maybe like Australia. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, of course, Madagascar 3 took them to Europe for obvious reasons because the Madagascar films are huge in Europe, but it made for a very fun movie, so I'm not complaining. So hopefully, if they make another Madagascar, they take them to, more exotic locations. There's a lot of fun with those characters, and I think you can get a lot of mileage out of them now that they've fully realized the series' potential with the third one. It sounds weird to say, but yeah, there was always something in Madagascar that I thought wasn't quite cracked in the first or second film. Only in pieces, only in parts of the first 2 Madagascars I think they discovered, what they could do with it, but with the third one, I think they fully cracked it. Puss in Boots 2. I've always been supportive of this because Puss in Boots was a good, old-fashioned swashbuckling adventure, and I'm up for more. And besides, Puss in Boots 2 was supposed to be an Arabian Nights story, so I kind of wanted to see, I was really looking forward to seeing Puss in Boots, fighting bad guys, in an Arabian Nights setting, and Aladdin probably will be in it too, because, Shrek and, Puss in Boots as well, they riff on the fairy tales, and they're set in a world where all the fairy tale characters live. In Puss in Boots' case, it was Jack and Jill, Jack and the Beanstalk, the Golden Goose, Humpty Dumpty. So it makes sense that Puss in Boots 2 would have an Arabian Nights setting and work off of Arabian Nights tales like Aladdin and Ali Baba. And so I hope that happens too, and that if it does, it keeps the same storyline and setting that it had before it was moved off the slate. I remember Antonio Banderas himself hinted at it happening, or it being a crossover with Shrek, but honestly, I wanted to be just a proper Puss in Boots sequel, and I wanted to be set before the events of Shrek and Shrek 2, because more Puss in Boots and Kitty's Soft Paws would be fine. I don't know if anything else will get sequels. I mean, Home did well, but I don't think it did well enough to warrant a sequel, but who knows. And Trolls, that's kind of slogging worldwide, so I don't think that's getting a sequel anytime soon either. But if Boss Baby and Captain Underpants do well, then sequels are a guarantee. With something like Larrikins, if that's a big hit in 2018, yeah, that'll get a sequel. Kung Fu Panda seems to be over, I think. Jennifer Yu, director of Kung Fu Panda 2 and Kung Fu Panda 3, I think she said in an interview that, yeah, this is where we want to, leave it off, but she kind of hinted at the possibility of a fourth one in a sort of never say never context. But I think they're done with it, and Dean DeBois has made it very clear that How to Train Your Dragon 3 is going to be the very end of the series. And if they have to make another one, it'll be a spin-off, which would be fine. I mean, the world of dragons is big and vast and sprawling, so it'd be cool to do some world building, Fantastic Beasts style. I wish more animated movies would do that. I mean, Pixar, I think Pixar should totally make a Monsters, Inc. movie that doesn't have anything to do with Mike Sully or the company. One that takes place in another part of the monster world, because they set up this whole wide world of monsters. I want to see more of that. So, the same thing goes with some DreamWorks movies. I would be okay with a World of Dragons, sort of spin-off that has its own unique characters. So, with that being said, DreamWorks' future is uncertain, and a lot of the movies they announced in the previous couple of years, I'm not sure if any of them are going to move forward. They had announced movies like an adaptation of the classic character Hot Stuff, the Little Devil, an untitled movie about blue-footed boobies, the joke writes itself. I mean, when they announced it, I thought to myself, DreamWorks, are you trying to, reconfirm what people think about you? People still look at DreamWorks as that class clown studio that, loads their movies up with toilet humor and pop culture jokes and forced innuendos, but they've really moved past that. They've moved past those Shrek days. Although some of the movies still exhibit that kind of attitude, for the most part, they moved beyond that. So, something like the blue-footed boobies, in a way, it kind of says, oh, look, we're going back to our roots. Because, the joke writes itself. You can't have a movie about birds called boobies without a couple booby jokes. Imagine if they did make the movie and they completely played it straight, where the birds say, oh, we boobies are this, and we boobies are that, and nobody laughs. I mean, they could. Have you ever seen Yellow Submarine? There's a character in that movie called Jeremy Hillary Boob. Fudd. And, just because it was made in the 60s, it's just, as a matter of fact, Jeremy Hillary Boob Fudd. You want to take the boob? Would you help the boob, You would trust a boob? So, yeah. And I'm not sure anything from, 2010 will move forward at this rate. The Alma, the Gills All Fright Diner, the Rumblewick type stuff. Back then, they had also announced Dino Trucks and Troll Hunters, but those are now Netflix DreamWorks animated shows. And honestly, I couldn't see Dino Trucks working as a movie. And as for Troll Hunters, well, the series looks cool. Makes me wish it actually was an animated movie. It was going to be an animated movie at Disney first, and then Del Toro moved it to DreamWorks, and then it became a DreamWorks Netflix animated series.